And the last thing for this broadcast that I wanted to get to is my colleague Rania Khalek on Piers Morgan. That doesn't need an introduction, but for those of you who may not know, I have collaborated on this podcast with Rania Khalek. Rania is at BreakThrough News. She does some incredible interviews that she posts there as part of her Dispatches show. And she is someone with expertise she's a Lebanese American. She's based in Beirut. And she ended up on this broadcast. I'm going to ignore the people who she had to share airtime with. This clip that I want to show you is at the end here. They've had 35 minutes or so of conversation, and some basic points were made by Rania, and others got a chance to respond to them. And Piers has done his bullshit line of questioning. He's done his gotcha question about, Rania, would you condemn the Hamas attack on October 7th? This thing that he can't get off. He does this to every single guest that is on his show, even though it's largely irrelevant to having just a conversation about the lay of the land right now, what is happening in Gaza. And so then he does this he actually comes back and asks her again, would you like another opportunity to condemn Hamas, which leads to this gem of an exchange.
I believe what happened on October 7th was a reaction to Israeli terrorism.
Was it justified?
That's what I believe. I'm not going to sit here and play a game about whether it was justified or not. That is not my place to talk about.
It was a terror attack.
I am here.
Do you believe it was justified?
It isn't a game you're playing. It's a distraction.
Was it justified?
You are trying to distract from
Why don't you just answer the question?
Genocide. You are trying to distract from an ongoing genocide. Because I'm not playing that game.
It's not a game.
It's not my place to tell oppressed people what they... It's not my place to justify
so you now say they are oppressed
something.
people. Okay.
Rania, I don't understand.
Okay, now hang on, Emily. Emily, don't interrupt, please.
People. Why
Emily,
would you side with them?
let me finish. So they're oppressed people.
You are justifying a genocide.
Sorry,
there is a
Rania,
genocide of Palestinians
you just,
happening in Gaza
Rania,
right now.
That
is what I am here to talk about.
You just said they were oppressed people, which is what I said at the start. So do you believe that Hamas leaders are billionaires or not?
There's some Hamas leaders who have money. I don't know what that has to do with the genocide in Gaza.
Are they billionaires?
I don't know why you're why is this the conversation? It's
where do they
crazy
live?
to me. There are like children being bombed right now by Israel.
Where do they live?
Bombs supplied by my government.
Where do the Hamas billionaires live? The guys that run
Here's
Hamas.
where I don't even understand. I really have no idea where you're going.
You don't care,
I actually
do you?
don't know if there's a Hamas billionaire. I don't know if there's a Hamas billionaire, Piers. I just know that what you're doing right now is trying to distract from a genocide that Israel is carrying out.
All I'm doing actually...
Yes.
Yeah, all I'm actually doing is asking you very simple questions, and your failure to answer them is very illuminating.
My failure to answer if there's rich members of Hamas? What does that have to do with the genocide taking place in Gaza, Piers?
Oh,
are there billionaire Israelis?
I would say it's
that
got
doesn't change the fact that Israel's carrying a...
Actually, it's got everything to do with a lot of it, actually, is that you have a bunch of rich billionaire terrorists leading Hamas, and they're not actually the oppressed people you're trying to paint them as. They are rich terrorists leading a terror group, and they don't even live in Gaza. They don't care about the lives of people in Gaza.
I know that, Piers, I stand on the right side of history by opposing a genocide, and you are an accomplice to it by sitting here and propagandizing
whatever. You can use all that bullshit. You can bullshit that stuff as much as you like, but
wow, this is incredibly aggressive. You guys can just sit here and bully me, but you're just a bunch of genocide.
I'll give you one last chance to just answer a simple question. Do you think what happened on October the 7th was justified? Yes or no?
Do you think Israel's ethnic cleansing and apartheid and segregationist policies
You're not going to answer. Thank you all for coming on.
I'm giving you the chance, and you're not.
Thank you all for coming on Uncensored. I appreciate it.
Rania was amazing. Rania handled that the way that somebody should. It's despite what Piers Morgan says about Rania bullshitting and not answering questions, he's actually the bullshitter. It's Piers Morgan who is a bullshit artist and way more inclined to churning it out than Rania Khalek. And effectively, that's what he was doing there, because he doesn't really care about the billionaires of Hamas. He doesn't care about the politics, the political leaders of Palestine. He is forming this gotcha question, or I don't even know if he formed it. A producer gave it to him, and he made sure he ended the show on it. It was one of the questions, I have no doubt, was on a sheet in front of him and available to use during the interview if he felt like it was useful. And so in that moment, the word he heard rattling around in his head was, Rania is telling me the Palestinian people are oppressed. The Palestinian people are oppressed. Okay. I've got a question for you. If they're oppressed, how come Hamas has billionaires who are living outside of Gaza? Man, that'll shut down this debate, right? She won't be able to continue claiming that Israel is oppressing Palestinians and this has to stop, because I'll show her those Hamas billionaires, they're living outside of Gaza, and if there can be billionaires in Hamas, then there must not be the kind of oppression happening in Palestine that this Arab American woman is going on and on about on my show. I mean, it's just fucking ridiculous. And no better than what you heard. I mean, it's in the same genre of questions that younger people had to deal with during the Occupy movement, when someone would come to them and question what they were trying to do and say, well, you're using an iPhone. You've got an iPhone here. And do you know how Apple makes the iPhone? But you're live streaming on an iPhone. So there you go. You don't really have principles of supporting the 99% versus the 1%. You've got an iPhone that you're live streaming. And I know, here you go. Piers Morgan, after listening to a conversation and that he's had repeatedly, he's not actually advancing the conversation with his uncensored debate show. If you tune in, it's kind of like Groundhog Day, where you get the same conversation over and over again, and it's like Crossfire on steroids, and it purports to be facilitating a wide range discussion, but all he's doing is tokenizing people and setting up Arabs and forcing them to condemn certain acts that are already condemned globally. So why should they be brought on and forced to condemn? And then occasionally the Zionists that can't control themselves gets put in their place. Or he had that one valuable clip with an Israeli spokesperson who embarrassed themselves by saying he wasn't authorized to tell Piers how many civilians have been killed by the Israeli military. But with that being said, Hamas billionaires to shut down the defense of Palestinians from being attacked relentlessly in an assault that has no end in sight.